Gonna do something different today. We're gonna talk about why there are so many overly positive watch reviews out there, and whether or not this is really a sign that you shouldn't trust reviewers. Because for many, this is exactly what that means to them. That if a channel or a blog has too many overly positive reviews, like they never really say anything bad about anything, then it's a sign that they're a shill or that there's something going on in the background. And honestly, there are a lot of overly positive reviews out there, and sometimes this may be the case. But as for someone who's been on this side of the camera for a while now, maybe too long now, there are some other reasons that you may not realize or think of as to why this also happens. So I kind of wanted to pull back the curtain here and just have a honest, straight conversation and kind of get a little more transparency going when it comes to just the whole online review game. And to do that, I'm going to go over 5 reasons why I think this happens so often. But before we really get into it, I want to have a little bit of a background here because this is a video that I've been wanting to make for a while, and I may do a few more like it. Because over the last few years, one thing that I've noticed that's changed is that there's a lot more negative attitudes and mistrust of online reviewers. And this is stuff I've seen here on YouTube, on, say, WatchCrunch, Facebook groups, and even recently in person at a few meetups. So, like I said, I've been wanting to pull back the curtain, so to speak, and just have some simple, honest, transparent talks about what goes on with us reviewers, or at least what I think is going on. And if there's one particular takeaway I want you guys to get out of all of this, is that not all reviewers are the same. We don't all work the same, and we're not all doing the same thing. So, even if there's one you really shouldn't trust out there, that doesn't necessarily mean you shouldn't trust all of us. And that's also one of the reasons that I always say that if you're really interested in buying something, watch multiple reviews. You'll get multiple opinions, as well as just some safeguards just in case one person is doing something a little weird or shady. And I just want to be clear here that this isn't going to be a defense of all reviewers. Like, we're all innocent, nothing bad's going on, you guys are imagining it. No, the longer I do this, the more suspicious of stuff I become. And I know there is some shady stuff out there. And that's the first thing we're going to talk about. That's reason number 1, the shilling. Or as I like to call it, shenanigans, just because it's more fun to say. And this is going to be where something's going on in the background that's going to cause a reviewer to either completely omit stuff or really pull some punches when they're talking about a watch. And this can happen for a variety of reasons. The biggest one is probably the ones you guys think of, that they're somehow directly being paid or directly being compensated in order to make more of a commercial than a review. That they're there fully to promote the brand, not necessarily tell you what's really going on. Then there's the second most common type, and this is when the channel or the blog has gone full affiliate, where everything they look at conveniently has an affiliate link to either Amazon or AliExpress, and they're directly making money off selling stuff to you. Or maybe indirectly, because that's more how affiliate stuff works, they just get a commission, but the point is they're really making money selling stuff. And as far as I'm concerned, one of the most dangerous types of videos out there is going to be the top 10 lists. Not every top 10 lists, but the top 10 lists where everything is conveniently on Amazon or AliExpress and there are no real images of the watches, just stock images. For me, this is a flat out cash grab. There's no other explanation behind it. Because if you've actually seen those watches, you have real photos of those watches. And if you've never really seen those watches, how can you rank them, let alone recommend them? And one thing I do want to make clear here is that I think there's a distinction between a promotional video, say where a brand doesn't want the watch back, and a full-on commercial, where somebody's gone full salesman. And the same with having just a few affiliate links here and there and going full affiliate and full home shopping network. And perhaps this is a longer topic for another video. But I think the main reason to tell when something like this is going on is just through consistency over time, in terms of their opinions on things and how they just handle different watches. Say, like watches that get sent in versus the ones they buy. Are they treating them the same? And this really just takes time to figure out. Now, there's also a slightly more innocent or more benign form of shenanigans that are going on, and this often happens with newer, younger, smaller channels. And I say innocently because they're not necessarily profiting off this, that they're not getting to keep anything and they're not being paid to say what they're saying. Because the way newer, smaller, inexperienced channels operate is that they're desperate for content. Watches are expensive, so they're pretty much out there asking anyone with a pulse to get a watch to review. And because of this, and because of maybe they're a little more inexperienced about all of this, sometimes they may feel bad about slamming a watch or say something bad about it. That they kind of feel like maybe they're stabbing the brand in the back when the brand did them a favor. Or maybe they're just afraid of saying too many bad things and that flow of watches and content just stops. Which, honestly, can happen. Over the years, I've seen a few bridges burned myself. But the way I look at it is that's just part of the game. That's how this is supposed to work. And a lesson that all of us reviewers need to learn at some point or another is that the people we're loyal to, the people that are our customers, so to speak, are those of you watching and not the brands. And that's not only lesson in ethics, but that's also the only way your channel is going to grow. The brands won't help you grow, but the viewers will. Anyway, that's the shilling or the shenanigan side of things. And even as cynical and as suspicious as I am, I like to think that doesn't happen near as often as some people say. But the other four reasons we're going to go over happens more often. And I'm going to do this kind of in order of how often I think it happens. So number two here, and I think the biggest reason this happens, is that before we even turn on the camera, there's a sort of pre-filter or a pre-selection process in terms of what watches we're going to do videos on. And this does filter out a lot of crappy watches. Just to give you an example, I do about one video a week, but on average, I'm probably getting 5 requests a week for outside reviews, for brands asking me to take a look at their watch. And at the same time, that video I do a week isn't always on a watch that's sent in. So as you can see, I turn down a vast majority of the requests. And the watches that do eventually make it on here, I'm picking for one of 3 reasons. That they're watches that I think I'll like, or that I think you guys will like and be interested in buying. Or there's the third type that I know you guys aren't going to be interested in buying, but that I think they're interesting to look and talk about. Now, this doesn't mean that everything I'm going to look at is going to be great or that they're going to be perfect, but it does mean that before I ever turn that camera on, I'm already pre-filtering out the stuff I know I'm not going to like, the stuff that I think is crap. And I think every channel does something similar, although it might kind of depend on the type of channel. Like I was saying before, new young channels, they're desperate for content, and they're going to do a video on whatever watch they can get their hands on. And ironically, the channels that do paid reviews or that they charge a reviewer fee, which I think is happening more and more out there, at least probably more than you think. But because of that, they might wind up with more negative reviews than other types of channels because their priority on picking a watch is vastly different. They're not necessarily concerned about what watches they like as much as who's going to pay. And the thing is, if they're still a good reviewer, they'll slam a bad watch for being a bad watch, and you don't necessarily need to worry about that. Now, for reason number 3, we may have the almighty algorithm to thank. And what I mean by that is that there may be more negative videos out there than you realize, and that the algorithm just isn't letting you know they exist. Because remember that third reason I said I'd pick a watch to review, where it's something I know you guys aren't going to be interested in, that you guys won't want to buy, but that I think is just interesting to look at and talk about? Yeah. Those are my worst performing reviews by far. Think my recent Number Cruncher review or the Cuff Buster from last year. I think those are good examples of those types of watches. And I don't necessarily blame you guys for those performing poorly, because that's just how this whole thing works. If you're not necessarily interested in that watch, you're not necessarily going to click on the video. And even if you do click on the video to watch it, you're not going to watch much of it. Again, that's just kind of how this works. But the side effect of that, or the end result of that, is the same with the algorithm regardless. The algorithm looks at that and interprets it as, this is a bad video, no one cares about it, and because of that, I'm not going to let anyone know it exists, even my subscribers. So unless you just happen to be searching for that watch, or you happen to go on my channel page and just click through and see what my old videos are, you may not even know those videos exist. And this sort of happens with negative reviews as well, because most negative reviews aren't really entertaining. They're kind of boring to watch. And so the algorithm, I think, buries a lot of them. Because if a watch is bad, again, you guys aren't interested and you're not watching it. Now, I think some of you at this point are going to say, hold on, I've seen some negative reviews on some specific channels, but I think that's more the exception than the rule. Because most of the time, those aren't just negative reviews, but entertainingly negative reviews, where oftentimes the video is geared right towards that, towards maybe being more entertaining than informational. And they just slam the watch for slamming the watch, or they just roast it with an eye on just being funny and entertaining, and not much priority on just telling you what you need to know. And honestly, sometimes those guys are better YouTubers than they are reviewers. But I think the bigger point is that not all of us have the ability to do a video like that and make it entertaining, or maybe even sometimes want to do a video like that. Because it kind of takes a special kind of person, a special kind of dick, shall we say, in order to do a video like that. Which, to be fair, YouTube these days is more about entertainment, and being able to do a video like that is being a better YouTuber than I am. This brings us to the fourth reason, and this is another bad one. I think the second reason, that pre-filter one, is actually a good one most people don't know about. But this is another bad one, because this is just about incompetence. And that's because I think there are way too many channels out there these days that are pushing quantity over quality. That as soon as they get a watch in, they turn the camera on, they hold it in front of the camera and say just whatever comes to their mind. In short, they're just not taking the time to get to know each watch, and they're just trying to crank out as many videos as they can. And maybe that also makes them better YouTubers and reviewers. But the bigger point here is that from my own experiences, I don't really notice the negative things or the critical things about a watch until I actually wear it for a bit out in the real world, for at least a couple of days, and the longer the better here. And I think this is something that just a lot of them aren't taking their time to do. Or maybe in some instances, they're just too afraid to do it with a watch that's lent in, that they don't want to scratch it up and send it on to somebody else. But, a whole point of a watch is that it's supposed to be worn out in the real world, and you don't really get to know a watch until you do. So for me, and I'm not going to name channels here, but for me, I don't really put a lot of stock into any channel that's run by a single person and does more than 3 videos a week. 3, I think, is even pushing it, but if you're doing more than that, there's no way you can spend enough time with each watch. Now, that doesn't mean you should stop watching those channels or that you can't learn anything from those channels, but you kind of got to go into it knowing that you're watching more of an unboxing or first impressions video than a full review. And there may just be more to the story that you're not getting. And the last reason I have is actually kind of obvious when you think about it, but I'm not sure people think about it as often as they should. And that's just straight up fanboyism. This doesn't really need much explanation. Fanboyism is fanboyism. I think it actually happens more often in luxury videos, but I think it can still happen in just about any brand at any price. And I've even seen a fair share of AliExpress fanboys out there. And this is simply going to be where somebody is so in love with the brand that they got their blinders on, or that they're making excuses for the brand, or they're just in complete denial. And I think this can also lead to some interesting extremes. Like you have a type of video where somebody's just bought their first luxury watch and they're all excited and they want to show it off. So they're definitely fully in the honeymoon period. So they're ignoring any potential problem. And sometimes it sounds like they're really just talking it up to convince themselves they didn't make a mistake. Or sometimes this can go even further and you get an extremely negative video. Like when who's a fanboy and they've just fallen completely out of love with the brand and they're acting like a crazy ex on Facebook, just overreacting to everything. Which is usually what happens in those whole I'm never buying a Seiko again kind of videos. You know what I'm talking about. Either way, not objective reviews. So, those are my 5 reasons why I think there are more positive reviews out there than negative ones. And like I said, they're not all good reasons. In fact, most of them aren't. Shenanigans are afoot. There's no doubt about it. But remember, it's not necessarily going to be from everyone. There are some other reasons out there. And one more thing, just do me a favor here. Before you go off to someone else's video and accuse them of being a shill or saying, what shenanigans are you up to? Just politely ask them a question about what's going on and see how they respond. As well as watch that whole video. Don't skip through it, just to make sure they're saying what you think they're saying or not saying in that video. Because I've lost count the number of times somebody's skipped through one of my videos and has been like, hey, you didn't say this, or you should have pointed this out. And I'm like, I did, right here. And they just missed it. Anyway, That's all I got for you with this one. As usual, let me know what you think about this video down below, and especially if you'd like some more videos like this, and maybe what topics you'd like to hear me talk about. I think there should be some more transparency and honesty when it comes to the whole review game. And as always, you guys know what to do down below. Like, comment, subscribe, that whole thing really helps the channel out. But I'm Shane, this is Relative Time, and I'll see you next time.